Hello, my name is Vincent Rhodes, and this is presentation number 2 based upon Lance Armstrong and the doping that takes place within cycling. We'll begin by talking briefly about Lance Armstrong and the early success that he had within endurance sports. By the age of 15, Lance Armstrong had already began winning at least $20,000 a year just off these endurance events, which is a huge amount for a 15-year-old. By the age of 16, Lance Armstrong was named National Rookie of the Year within sprinting triathlons, which is a 3-stage event. Lance Armstrong at an early age was tested, and those tests showed that he was able to use the oxygen within his body 90% more efficiently than the average human. Not only that, they also tested other endurance athletes, and that test showed that Lance Armstrong was able to again use that same oxygen that those other athletes were intaking at a 42% more efficient rate. So it's not surprising that Lance Armstrong had such a success at an early age and continued that success throughout cycling. Immediately after graduating high school, he was invited and joined the national cycling team where he began his cycling career. He's a naturally gifted endurance athlete, so it wasn't a surprise that he was able to have success within events like the Tour de France and other major cycling contests. Cycling played a huge role for Lance Armstrong and the success that he had, but by 25, after completing 2 Tour de France's but not winning any stages, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. That cancer also moved to other parts of his body, such as his lungs. He did have support though, based upon his friends, family, and also the team that he was racing for. That team's name was Cofidis. Cofidis had a public announcement that they were going to support Lance Armstrong through the recovery process that he was going through and give him all the needs necessary to go back to cycling once it was completed. But behind closed doors, that was a different story. Cofidis began having these conversations on how they could positively change the contract that they had signed Lance Armstrong to and get him to agree to this. Those conversations went from behind closed doors to Lance Armstrong, where he eventually did re-sign a contract. But unfortunately, that contract expired before he was able to ever race under the name Cofidis, and they did not see any success with each other. It wasn't all negative though that came from this diagnosed testicular cancer that Lance Armstrong had. He and Nike were able to start a corporation that went by the name of Livestrong. Most people commonly refer to Livestrong as a yellow band that people wear that show the support of cancer research and finding a cure to assist millions of people. Together, Livestrong, Lance Armstrong, and also Nike were able to raise $381 million for cancer research. That is a huge amount of money, and I'm sure played great aspects within the research field. Next, we will discuss the grueling task of completing a Tour de France and also the doping that has taken place for many years within cycling. The Tour de France is a 23-day race with only 2 days of rest between that. It is a 3,500 kilometer race that spreads out through Europe. Europe considers this one of its greatest sporting events, only behind the World Cup and also the Olympics, and that is world famous events, so it shows what importance the Tour de France plays for the Europe economy, the people, and the fans of cycling. The Tour de France is broken up into individual daily stages, and those stages have daily team winners and individual winners. Each stage changes for its scenery. Some can be flatland, hills, downhill. It changes from day to day, so that's what makes it such a grueling event without the racing. Doping began in the public eye in 1969 when a racer of the last name Anquetil openly admitted that he doped himself and that anyone in the cycling industry that said otherwise was plain out lying. That idea does not sit well with many people that view this as an ethical sport. Between the years 1999 and 2005, 20 out of the 21 winners for daily stages either tested positive or admitted to doping within the race. That shows what a rampant problem they have within cycling and the doping world. Doping hasn't changed since 1969, only the ways that the doping has taken place has changed, and the idea that the USADA, or USADA as some call it, have began testing during competition and out of competition to ensure that these cheaters are no longer taking place within the sport. Do I think doping has gotten better or worse since this announcement in 1969? I feel it hasn't changed either way. I just feel that it's become part of the sport, whether you're doping now within cycling or you have ever doped within cycling. As the case study stated, you have contributed to the issue that's within cycling. How would a culture like this affect Lance Armstrong or any other cyclist to join a brotherhood? I think it forces the hand for many professional cyclists to dope. I think that within a team, there's a lot of trust that goes into team members, and if they see a team member not partaking in events that everyone else is, it stems to bring distrust with that person, and it might push them out of a team that cyclist had worked so hard to get to. Lance Armstrong, for instance, started at such an early age, 15, that it seemed he had worked his whole life to become part of the United States cycling team, and wasn't going to risk it for not wanting to do what everyone else was doing. Is this the culture that breeds success? Temporarily. I think that culture, though, is ultimately the downfall of what cycling is today, and that it is just a doping sport, and many believe that is filled with a lot of cheaters. How would I apply the dark triad that we learned earlier in the semester to this, which is narcissism, psychopath, and also Machiavellism? I think that this case study and also Lance Armstrong show all three. We can start with narcissism. And that's just not Lance Armstrong, but also the team. They showed no empathy for their cheating. They showed no empathy for the sport that they had worked so hard for, and that they were going to do what was needed to win. Next comes the psychopath behavior within that their egos and pride for winning took precedence over what was right or what was wrong. They were willing to not only dope themselves, but also convince their teammates and manipulate the situation for their success. I think that manipulation not only was within their teammates, but also the cycling sport as a whole. They had people buy into the procedures that they were working hard ethically behind the scenes, when in reality, they were selling bikes that were given to them by the sponsorships for cash, so they can support the habits that they had built. To finish, I think that this case study showed many aspects of what we've learned within this course. I think it showed that you may be able to cheat your way to the top in the real world, but that does not harbor longevity or long-term success within the marketplace that you're trying to access. Working hard and doing what's right, the ethical way, is what builds longevity and also builds the character needed for success. I think these athletes have a moral code that they should stand by, being in such a public figure, that taking the easy way is not the right way. But working hard and doing what is needed to be a successful person will show the youth that look up to them on what's needed. So to end this, I think that the ethical behavior would always be the right way to conduct yourself within any sport, business, or the real world.